Hello friends, welcome to CEC Live Lectures. Dear friends, today we are going to talk on one of the most important and interesting theories. Today we are going to discuss on world system theory, and to discuss on the topic we have with us in our studios Dr. Sujit Thakur. Dr. Sujit Thakur is assistant professor in Delhi University and he is contributing a lot in the area of academics. So let's welcome our guest Dr. Sujit Thakur and let's try to understand this particular theory which we call world system theory. Hello sir, welcome to the lecture.
Good afternoon to all of you once again. As we have been already discussing about the international relations theories, and since last 3 to 4 lectures we have been discussing about the Marxist approach of international relations theories, where we discussed first the Marxist analysis, then we discussed about the dependency theories, and in this series we have now today we are going to discuss about the world system theory. It's a very interesting topic. As all of you know, most of the students sometimes get confused about the world system theory when they have to write the answer. They generally write about the interdependent relations, or they write about Indo-China, Indo-America, Indo-Russia. But most of the time we understand the world system theories include overall relationship of the world, but in fact it's include. But here, when we have to discuss within the Marxist perspective or the contemporary Marxist perspective about the world system theory, one of the most prominent thinker, his name is Immanuel Wallerstein. He developed a concept about the world system theories, where he has divided the world into the 3 areas: core, periphery, and semi-periphery. And his main premises is that the history has been marked by rise and demise of the series of the world system. And on this basic premises, he developed the whole understanding of the world system theory. When he said history has been marked by rise and demise of the series of the world system, he tried to analyze how historically a state has been developed, or the different empire system or different world system have been developed, and how at a certain time it played a very influential role in the world system. Then after a certain time it replaced by another series of the system. So basically in this lectures we are going to understand how Immanuel Wallerstein has been trying to develop his understanding about the world system theory, and how he analyzed the whole concept of international relations theory within the concept of world system theory. Here we have to also understand that how the realist thinker like Kenneth Walsh, who also developed a international relations theory within the perspective of neorealism, where he emphasized more on the world structure system. There he given more and more importance to the military mights, economic military mights, than he has given the importance of the economics. But here when we have to discuss within the contemporary perspective, contemporary Marxist perspective of the Immanuel Wallerstein concept of the world system theory, he tried to develop a world system where he has given more prominence to the economics. And he said state is important actor, but state is not very important actor within the world systems, because world economy basically determine the whole policy and whole system, whole structure of the state, because world economy basically playing a very key role in understanding the world system, rather than the state playing a very important role. What we understood till today through the understanding of the realism, where they said state is the key actor, and a state playing a very important role within the world system, and a state actions and interactions decide the world system. Later on, what we understood in the neuralist perspective, where they said world structure. When they talked about the world structure, they talked about military might, capability, and differences of the capabilities of the state. But here, when the contemporary Marxists started discussing about the state or world structure system, they started giving more focus on the world economy, and they are telling that state has a very minimal role, and state act according to the situation they have in the world economy. So keeping all these things in the mind, we are here trying to discuss and analyze about the world system theory, how the world system theory has been developed by the Immanuel Wallerstein, and how he historically analyzed the whole series of the world system, where he started talking about from 14th, 15th to 16th century, then he started talking about 17th, 18th century, then he started talking about 19th and 20th century, then he started talking about 21st century. So we are going to understand how Immanuel Wallerstein trying to evolve a new kind of understanding within the international relations theory, and how he analyzed the whole world system within his own framework, and there we are going to understand how it impacted the present global structure or the global economic structure, and how we are going to understand the present world perspective. So in the first slide, what we are going to discuss the origin of the world system theory. Here we are trying to tell this is the another major new Marxist analysis comes from Immanuel Wallerstein. See, we have already seen there is one of the most prominent thinking about the contemporary Marxist, that is the dependency theory, and another is the world system theory. The second point here, they say world system theory can be seen as a direct development of Lenin works of imperialism and the Latin American schools. Third point, he said under monopoly capitalism, two-tier system had developed, a dominant core exploiting a less developed periphery. Fourth is with the development of core and periphery, Lenin said the automatic harmony of interest between workers had no longer exist. And the last point in this slide is this argument were further developed by Wallerstein world system theory. What we are trying to here understand, see, in this whole slide, what we are trying to understand, see, this is another new Marxist perspective, where we have to understand how they try to analyze the world system theory. They are telling, see, when we discuss about the origin of the world system theory, we are getting, see, it originated from the direct understanding of the Lenin's work, where he developed the monopoly capitalism kind of systems, where he said, see, within the monopoly capitalist systems, a certain system would develop where he analyzed the monopoly capitalism in different perspective. He said, see, in the monopoly capitalism system, what would happen to the world, where few things you can easily notice that instead of export of the goods and the services, we can see the exports of the money, then they say the international trade cartel system would be developed. Then they say this international trade cartel systems would divide the whole world into different territorial regions, and this would lead to the different kind of interest struggle within the economy, and that would lead to the struggle within the world system, and where the marginal state would always suffer, and those who are on the core would always get benefited. So that they try to say when this kind of system would develop, definitely it would lead to the more conflict and more violence, and new system would develop. So within this perspective, Immanuel Wallerstein also trying to analyze the world system theory, where he took inspirations from the Lenin and tried to evaluate the world system within his own framework, where he said, see, definitely there is no national boundaries of the trade systems, and whenever any state would develop this kind of monopoly, other state would started to competing with that state, and it would lead to the conflict, and some certain time this state would dominate at the world level, and another time the another state would compete, and they started demanding for the redistributions of the resources, and that led to the conflict and war and struggle, and that led to the another kind of development of the systems, which he analyzed in the later part when we discuss about the world system theory. In the next slide, what we discuss about the rise and future demise of the world system theory. Here we say, whereas dependency theory focuses on core periphery relations, world system theory focuses on entire world system, including relationship among core state and the rise and decline of hegemons. Second point here, they say the main unit of analysis in world system theory is the world system, which has a single division of labor and multiple culture system. Third point here, we say world system will not physically include the whole world. It is unified area characterized by particular economic and political structure. Fourth point is the concept thus ties economic and politics together. And fifth point is basic premises that history has been marked by rise and demise of the series of the world system. Now, we can easily clearly understand here. You see, they say whereas dependency theory focuses on core periphery relations, world system theory focuses on entire world system, including relationship among core states and the rise and decline of hegemons. When we have to compare with the dependency theory, we can easily understand that dependency theory like Eniguna Frank and Rolf Labus, they talk about as long as we would not develop our own systems, we would never ever succeed in this present world global economy, because it's based on the inequality, it's based on the injustice. So that they only analyze about the exploitations of the poor countries. But in the present world system theories, they started analyzing the whole concept of the world structures, where he says, it's not only analyzes the core country development, they also started analyzing about the peripheral countries, and then they also say how the core periphery relations would depend, and there he also given the new ideas about the semi-periphery. And he says, one has to understand how different kind of system would develop within the core areas, and never it would benefited the peripheral areas, and whenever the periphery areas would develop itself as a same peripheral areas, and then in certain times they develop themselves into the core areas, you would have to understand how it all change took place within the world system. And here we have to analyze in the later part how the core exploited the periphery, and how semi-periphery is playing an absorber role, where they balance the whole world structures. And the second point here, they say, the world system theory basically analyze the world system, where they say, in the present global structure systems, or whatever the world capitalist system, when Emmanuel started analyzing about it, they say, it's based on basically simple division of the labor or single division of the labor, but at the same time there are multiple or cultural systems. There is not one cultural system, there are a number of cultural systems within the different kind of territorial areas. But when the economic matter, we see they follow the same developmental path, and they follow the same regulations, where they divide the economy on the basis of single division of the labor or simple division of the labor. Third point, they say when we analyze about the world system theory, they say it doesn't mean it include the whole earth. They say it includes certain areas where the state or the territorial areas would integrate themselves with that system. And in the 14th to 15th and 16th century, it's the Europe. Then later on, it includes the Latin American and Asia and Africa, and later on the whole world. So they try to say, when we discuss about the world system theory, we cannot understand it's discuss about the whole earth. It's discuss about the structure that prevail at that time, and that decide the whole system, and it doesn't mean it's include the whole earth. And we have started describing, discussing, and analyzing and interpreting the whole world, how the human species have been developing within the different systems. But Emmanuel basically focus mainly on the main economic places where the activities have been taking place within the world capitalist systems. So he analyzed about the decline of the Habsburg Empire in the 15th, 16th century. Then he talked about how the different empire systems started developing itself, and the started standing army and the economic division, simple division of economic labor, and how they absorbed themselves in the world capitalist systems. Here, once again, they say, within that interpretations, they're trying to tell it, in the 16th, 17th century, how the world moved from the European areas to the another area, and then in the 18th century when the Latin American countries got independence, how they absorbed themselves. Then in the 19th and 20th century when the Asian and African countries started getting independence, how they absorbed themselves. So his interpretations is basically based on how the European economy, which he says world capitalist economy, developed itself from the European areas to the North Central European areas, then to the Latin America, then to the Africa, and then to the Asia, and he started analyzing it within the historical evaluation. The third point here, they say, what we already discussed about it, in the realist school of thought or the liberal school of thought, they mainly focus about the politics, and then they consider the economics as a secondary issue. But in the world system theory, economics is the priority, but politics also getting importance. But here they say they put economics and politics together, because when we analyzing the Marxist, they say we cannot understand the world in the isolations. When we have to understand the world, we can understand the world in totality. So here they basically derived his Wallerstein also inspired with the traditional Marxist understanding about, they say, we cannot understand in the isolations to the world system. So when we have to understand the world system, we have to understand the world system together, economics and politics, how the economics playing an important role in deciding the politics. Here, there is only slight differences we have to understand. Whenever we have to analyze about the realist school of thought, when we have to analyze about the liberal school of thought, they say the politics determine the economics, and the politics play a very important role in deciding the world structures, world economy, world culture, world society. But here, the contemporary Marxists like the William Wallerstein, they are telling, it's the economics that playing a very important role. Even the state policies being basically governed by the world economic systems, and state situation is also depend on how they are placed themselves in the world economy. And in another side, like the Hans Morgenthau and the Kenneth Walsh and others said, it's the state strongness, state's military might that decide the state capability in the world system. But here, the world system theory basically influenced by the Marxist, original Marxist thinking, where they say, we cannot understand the politics in the isolations. We have to understand the politics and economics together. Then we can understand properly to the world system. Then, the last point here, what we say, the hypothesis on that basis, basically the Emmanuel Wallerstein are trying to analyze the whole world capitalist system. Here they say the basic premise is that history has been marked by rise and demise of the series of the world system. When we say the history has been marked by rise and demise of the series of the world system, then we have to understand, he says it's not only one system that developed the whole world. There are different kind of systems that developed the series of the world systems. When earlier he said there was a mini systems, then it was the world empire system, then there was a world capitalist system, and in future maybe some other system would replace. So he said one should not only confine to that, this system would prevail. He says there is a cyclic path, and every system has some kind of contradictions, and over a time every system would develop itself, and it's a lot of contradictions, and that when the contradictions would lead to the conflict, the system would replace automatically by the another system. So the basic premises here, Emmanuel Wallerstein's, the basic hypothesis of Emmanuel Wallerstein's trying to tell us, one has to understand, if you have to understand the international relations theory, you should not understand, the only one system would govern the whole world for all the periods. There are different kind of systems govern the world systems at the different era, and whenever there is a contradictions develop, the conflict came into the path, and that would lead to the different kind of series of the world systems. And on that basis, his whole analysis is based on the world capitalist system. And here we are going to understand how he has been trying to analyze the series of the world system. Where he said, basically he given the three kind of systems. just later on we will discuss about it. But 1660 to 1715, the same thing. England vis-a-vis Netherlands. When he said in the 1616, we know England was Netherlands was established as a sovereign country after he got the freedom from the Habsburg Empire or the Spanish Empire, and he started showing his commercial supremacy, and he started dominating across the world, and then it has been challenged by the Britain. From 1616 to 1715, we saw there was a struggle of the dominance between the Britain and Netherlands. Then what we saw in 1715 to 1815, France vis-a-vis England, because in 1715 it had been established that England had been overcome the commercial hegemony of the Netherlands, and then France started challenging the hegemony of the Britishers, but Britishers succeeded in maintaining its hegemony, but time and again France started challenging it. In the second slide, what we see in the 19th century, what we are witnessing, Germany vis-a-vis England, and then in the 20th century the Soviet Union vis-a-vis the US, and in the 20th century the US vis-a-vis China. Now see how the William Stein, when he started analyzing about his world system theory, he said, see, because we all know William Stein talking about there was a mini systems, then there was a world empire system, then there was a world capitalist systems, and here his basic focus on analyzing about the world capitalist systems, and where he said, see how the world capitalist system has been developed within this present world order. Here, in the when he talked about from 15th century to 16 to 17th century, he talked about see there was a conflict, there was a struggle of hegemony between the British and the Netherlands. Then he talked about in the 17th century what we witnessed, there was a struggle between the French and the Britishers. Then the 19th century, when the Persia converted itself into a Germany, then we saw there was a struggle between the Germany and the England. Then in the 20th century, after the Second World War, we saw the Soviet Union emerged as one of the most powerful states, and US also emerged as one of the most hegemonic states. Then there was a struggle between the Soviet Union and the America. And in the later 20th century, what we saw, USA emerged as one of the most powerful countries. Then on the 21st century, now people are started discussing about the struggle between the USA and the China. And some projections are also talking about the time would come after 2040, the India and China would be the two most dominating power in the world system. So the way he has been started to trying to analyze about the world system theory. Here, what we see how he has been analyzing the world capitalist system. Here again, we see when he says world system is characterized by certain particular structure with on depending on the other. The capitalist world economic main features are productions for the market to gain the maximum profit and an unequal exchange between core and peripheral states. In human history, there have been two basic varieties of world system: a world empire system like Roman Empire to all other empires, and the world economic system from 1415 to 1640. Stein's key focus is analysis of the modern world economy characterized by capitalism. Now, we can easily understand what he tried to say. He said world system characterized by certain particular structure with depending on one another. That telling when we have to discuss about the world systems, we have to understand the certain particular structure depending on the one another, and it's not in the isolations. When any country are the part of the world systems, they are somewhere interacting with one another. Either their status is either in the periphery, or their status is either in the core, or their status as I say peripheral states. So we cannot see in the isolation. So world system theory talking about the concept of politics and economics together, where they're trying to tell once you become a part of the world system, you are depending on one another, and your state situation would be governed and depend on the economic might of your states or your systems vis-a-vis the world economic systems. The second point they say, see how we can understand about the world capitalist system. What is basically a world capitalist system? He says a world capitalist system is basically based on profit, profit maximizers dimensions. Whenever you are in the world capitalist systems, you are in the race to how to earn more and more profit through the market. And when your intention is to earn the more and more profit, definitely it will lead to some kind of unequal exchange between the core and peripheral states. So they say, you see, those who have a technological development, those who have all kind of resources, those who have a command on the things, definitely they would exploit those who do not have. And definitely that led to a certain kind of exploitations between the two systems, those who have and those who do not have. So when they analyze the world capitalist systems, they say that those who developed themselves as a core countries, they would have started exploiting the peripheral countries. And this, when they started analyzing about the world capitalist system, they say, you see, whether it's a 15th century, whether it's a 16th century, whether it's a 17th century, or it's a present contemporary 21st century, where if you have to analyze, you see the whole structure is based on core exploiting the periphery, and same periphery sometimes getting exploited by the core and sometimes exploiting the periphery. So his whole understanding is based on, you see, world system is based on unequal exchange and to gain the maximum profit. Third, he said, you see, when he talked about, basically, mainly, though he talked about, you see, before the 15th century, there was a many systems, but he said mainly there are two systems which govern the whole world history. One is the world empire, and second is the world capitalist system. When he said world empire, he didn't focus more on the world empire system. He just tell you what kind of the world empire system is, where he mentioned about the pre-medieval world kind of system, where he talked about the Roman empire system, where he talked about the Egyptian empire system, where he talked about the Chinese empire system. Later he talked about the Habsburg empire system, Russian empire systems, and the other French and other empire systems. But basically he focused more on the world capitalist system. So his main intention is to how to analyze the modern world economy rather than to analyze the world empire system. Here now we have to see how he analyzed about the world system theory. He said, see, the world system theory started in the 16th century. When he said world system theory started in the 16th century, but what his mean? He doesn't mean, see, the world system theory or world system was not prevailed before that. But his main focus, because he said in the human history there are two kind of system developed basically. Before that there was also system was developing, which we are going to later discuss about. But he's talking about, see, the two systems being basically developed. One is the world empire system that is based on conquest and subordinations of the other state, and the world empire system that is based on the simple division of the labor. And when he started focusing about the world capitalist system, he said, see, the world capitalist system started from the 16th century, and from 16th century to the present century, he started analyzing about the world capitalist system. And here he said, world system theory started in the 16th century based on international division of labor, and first it started in the Europe, then it's reached to the Western hemisphere, and then to the rest of the world. And accordingly, he has started deciding about the world economic system. More about the capitalist, when he said Western modern world economy, because his main focus is about the capitalist systems. And here you see the capitalist world economy established in the 16th century. It was based on international division of labor, and it first covered the Europe and expanded to the Western hemisphere and later other parts of the world. Then fourth, he said within this process of division of labor, expansion took place in somewhat accidental way. For a number of regions, Northwest Europe was in better positions to diversify its agriculture and connect it with industrial advance in textile and shipping. So the capitalist economy is built on a hierarchy of core areas, peripheral areas, and semi-peripheral areas. So we will discuss these 3 points on the later on.
But thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. Yes, dear friends, we will be continuing further and we'll be discussing the 3 points as mentioned by Dr. Sujit Thakur right now. So you are requested to be with us as we are back after a short break. Thank you. Hello friends, welcome back to this session. Friends, as you know that today we are talking on world system theory, and for the discussion on the topic we have with us in our studios Dr. Sujit Thakur. Dear friends, Dr. Sujit Thakur is an eminent professor, and we believe that whatever you have gained through the previous session, you have the deep insight into the topic, as we have delivered a lot for you under the topic in the previous session, and as we promised that we are going to give you more, so here we are. And for the discussion, as I already told you, we have with us Dr. Sujit Thakur. So let's welcome him once again and try to understand the other aspects of world system theory. Hello sir, welcome to the lecture.
Like in continuations with our lecture, what I have said, see, the Emmanuel Rostand's main focus to analyze about the world capitalist systems, and he had just given in the reference what kind of system about the world empire system and what kind of system of the mini systems. When we have to analyze about the world capitalist systems, he said, see, it started in the 16th century. It was based on the simple international division of the labor. Then it says he first started in the Europe, and then say why the Europe developed as a core countries. He said, see, in the accidental way, it's developed. Europe as a one of the most modern economy in the world capitalist system, where he says, see, some ecological factors, some geographical factors, and some technological innovations took place first in the European countries like the England and the Netherlands, Spain, and other part of the world. So it developed later on. It developed as a core country, especially in the textile areas, whether in the shipping area, whether the transportation areas, or in the military might. Some technological innovations took place there, and later on it developed in the hemisphere area, and from that it developed to the rest of the world. So here what we are understanding, see, how William Rostand analyzed about the world capitalist systems. He said the world capitalist systems developed first started developing itself in the 16th century. First time it developed in the 16th century. Where it developed on first time in the Europe. How it developed, it said it's accidental way due to some ecological factors, some historical factors, and innovative ideas, some military technology, some transportation technology, some agricultural innovations took place in that area, and therefore they got certain kind of benefit, and therefore they developed themselves as a core country in the later part. And when they became developed in these areas, then it started expanding its geographical expansions in the other part of the area. So they say first it developed in the Netherlands and the Britain, then it expanded itself in the northwestern Europe, then it's expanded itself in the Latin America, then it's expanded itself in Africa, then it's expanded into the other rest of the part, and after all, it includes the whole world economy. And therefore, Rostand says, see, world capitalist systems, how it started in the present world structure. Now, then he said, see, how we can understand this present world economy. Here they say, see, when we understand about from 16th century to the present century, then he says, see, in these 500 years, the world economy has been developed as a core, as a periphery, and the semi-periphery. And he has started analyzing about this core, periphery, and semi-periphery. Here, say, what is core? They say the core areas contain the advanced and complex economic activities like mass market industries and sophisticated industries. Second, they say, what is peripheral areas? Peripheral areas are the bottom of the hierarchy. It produces staple goods such as grain, wood, sugar, and so on. They often imply slavery or coerced labor. What industrial activity exists, it must be under the capitalist control of capitalists from core countries. And third, they say, what is semi-peripheral areas? Are economically mixed. They are middle layer between the upper stratum of the core countries and the lower stratum of peripheral areas. Now, within this box, the same thing we are trying to understand. They are telling us, see, when we have to analyze about what are the core areas, they are telling us, see, they are advanced and the complex. When they say they are advanced and the complex, then we have to understand what is their meaning of the advanced and complex. They are telling advanced means they have a democratic government, they have a high wages, they have import raw materials, export manufacturing, high investment, welfare services. Means they are trying to tell us, see, in the core countries, how you can identify. They are telling the core countries you can easily identify by if they have a democratic kind of government. They are telling their laborers having a high wages. Means they are earning, if labor have a high wages, like for the example, in the present time, like the KPO and the BPO. In the America, the same person, if employed in the BPO and the KPO, they are earning more than lakh rupees for the same job. But in India, they are earning just 25,000 rupees, because we are the same peripheral country at the present time. So equally, when they're talking about the democratic form of the government, means we are talking about the states are not delivering proper services to us, like in the health, in the educations, in all other sectors. We have been finding some kind of problem. If you go to the AIMS, if you go to the Safdarganj, if you go to any hospitals of the India, you find lot of masses are there, and there are a lot of struggles to get diagnosed. But if you go to the Western world, you find every systems are very properly established. So they are telling us, see, in the democratic form of the government, means everything, your participation is ensured, and whatever you expect from the state would able to deliver its services. But in the core country, in the peripheral countries, even the state wish to deliver the services, they haven't resources, they have a crunch of resources, they haven't this kind of infrastructure, they have a major constraints of the population's rise, and they have other constraints of the technology. So they are telling us, see, when you have to analyze about the core countries, you understand there is a democratic form of the government, there are high wages, then you can easily understand they generally, whatever they manufacture, they generally import the things, not export the things. Then they say, see, they import the raw materials and they export the manufacturing things. Means whatever in the core areas, like staple goods, then coal and other cottons and other, they generally import the things from the peripheral area, and then they manufacture it, and then they sell it in the high prices. Then the prices they purchase the raw materials. So they are telling, obviously, the surplus they are accumulating, and they started dominating on the other part of the world. Then they are also telling the high investment, what the Lenin also talked about. In the monopoly capitalism, you would not see the export of the goods and services, but you can see the exports of the foreign direct investment, foreign institutional investment. And right now, either it's China, either it's India, they are very pleased to inform all of us. We are now number one country of getting the foreign direct investment, foreign institutional investment. But in the monopoly capitalism system, Lenin talked about it. The theories of imperialism, they are talking about, in the such kind of systems, basically in the world capitalist systems, what we witness, that you will not witness the export of manufacturing goods and services. You would see the export of money, exports of transactions of money. And what we are witnessing, the same thing we are witnessing, that now the foreign companies, MNCs and TNCs are coming to our country, they are investing the money, and they are extracting all the profits from us, and the profit what we expect from this kind of investment, we are not getting. Sensex is rising, but the poverty, inequality are already increasing, and countries, though the GDP growth is increasing, but the poverty at the same time increasing. So they are talking about, this kind of world capitalist systems, we can easily find certain kind of anomalies would persist, but those who are developed already, those who have technological resources, those who have manufacturing resources, those who have money, they would always dictate the term on others, and they will have to follow it. When they talked about the international cartel systems, we can also compare with the present World Trade Organizations, where now they work like a supra-institutional organizations, where they even dictate the states how you will have to act in certain kind of policies. And once you become a member of that body, you will have to follow all the rules and regulations, and you cannot decide according to your state policies what would be the mode of the agreement between the two countries or the MNCs and TNC. Your whole agreement would govern under the rules and regulations of the World Trade Government. And this World Trade Organization is basically governed and dictated by the core countries, even if you see the IMF and World Bank. So somewhere when William Wallerstein's talking about it's based on unequal exchange, they're talking about, you see, the core countries is always exploiting the periphery countries. When they talk about the periphery countries, what kind of periphery system? They describe, you see, it's a non-democratic government. Means you cannot find a very democratic systems there, either it's dictatorial systems or autocratic systems, or even if the system persists there, you can find this, it's not properly democratized form of the government. The rulers generally dictate the term on the subjects, and they decide according to their own principle rather than what the subject or what the citizens would expect from them. They say what they do, they say they export the raw materials, and what they import the manufacturers. Then they see the wages are below the substances and no welfare services, what we talked about. Then we see the semi-periphery, means sometimes it's getting exploited, sometimes also exploiting the countries. Country like India, it's considered as a semi-periphery country. They are saying authoritarian government, means either it's the Indira Gandhi government or it's the Narendra Modi government. Opposition are talking about the government is authoritarian, not giving the chance to the opposition to raise the voice, but the government is telling it's following all kind of democratic principles. They are following all kind of rules and regulations. They are also establishing the constitutional norms. But generally there is a resentment among the number of civil rights groups and others, and many times we saw there is a caste conflict, there is a communal conflict, and there are different kind of conflict. Even if the government wishes to establish a certain kind of democratic norms, they are compelled to take a hard decisions. If you see the example of the Maldives at the present, the opposition's leader was behind the bar when the Supreme Court given the verdict to free him. The government started disobeying the Supreme Court judgment, and they detained the Supreme Court 2 judges, and they are telling they are overreaching their rights. So and they declared the emergency, and they started taking help from the China and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, because India talked about, you see, it's internal matters and they have to settle themselves. So the opposition leaders started demanding help from the India, and the president started demanding help from the China, Saudi Arabia and other countries. So we have to understand, you see, they are telling, you see, in the peripheral and peripheral areas, you cannot see a democratic form of the government. Then they say, you see, in the peripheral area, they export the mature manufactures and the raw materials. Means they also export the manufactured goods as well as the raw materials. Then they also import the manufacturers and the raw materials. Then there is a low wages and the low welfare services. Now, there are two things are common in the peripheral and semi-peripheral areas. One, there is no democratic government, there is low wages. So what I have given the examples, say, if you say either in any profession, whether it's a teaching, whether in the bureaucracy, or whether it's any kind of welfare services, you cannot compare the way the core countries are providing the wages to their teachers, to their employee, to their bureaucrats, to their politicians, or to the area of the core and periphery areas. Because if you compare their salary packages, they are highly less than that. So I have given the one example very properly about the KP and BPOs. You see, in the BPO industry, if the persons employed in the Delhi and the Bangalore and the Pune, they got a very lesser amount. But if they go for the deputations for the 6 months and a year in the London or in the France or the America, they earn a lot of money. Equally, in the United Nations peacekeeping forces, once the Indian Army, whatever they are getting the wages, and if once they deployed in the United Nations peacekeeping army, they start earning a lot of wages, because their earning is based on the international standards, and international standard is based on the core country's standard. So they are telling, you see, once you have to understand what kind of core countries, what is the periphery countries, what is the semi-periphery countries, then the William Wallerstein say you have to understand and you have to distinguish how the core countries are differentiated itself from the peripheral countries and how it differentiated itself from the semi-peripheral countries, because see, because the core countries is able to give the high wages, they are able to give all kind of services to their peoples because they exploited the core countries and the semi-peripheral countries. As long as they would exploit, they would earn more and more surplus, and they are able to provide the better services to their citizens rather than the countries who are on the marginal level like the peripheral and semi-peripheral countries. So they are telling you why it's happening, because they are telling you they are aggregating the surpluses, and when they are aggregating the surpluses, how they are aggregating the surpluses, because the whole exchange is based on unequal exchange, and this is the unequal exchange which we are going to describe how the William Wallerstein is trying to understand what is the unequal exchange and why it's based on the whole world structure, world capitalist system is based on unequal exchange. Now, in this slide, we are trying to understand Wallerstein's series of the world system, because see, when I said we have now understood how he analyzed about the world capitalist systems. Now we are trying to understand, you see, when Wallerstein's basic premises is history has been marked by rise and demise of the series of the world systems. He conceived the idea, you see, the first time before the 1415, he said a systems which developed that is known as the mini systems. When he said what is the mini systems, he said the mini system is basically a self-contained economic, political, social units. When he tried to analyze, because we have to understand what he said, in the long 1415 to 1614, a world capitalist system being established. When he says from 1415 to 1614, a world capitalist economic system being established, then he outlined before that what kind of systems would persist in the world level. He said there was a mini systems. Then basically what kind of the mini systems? He said there was a self-contained economic, political and social units. Then he said it's based on the simple division of labor. Then he said it with a single culture. Then say all members had a specific defined roles, such as hunters, farmers, carers, and so forth. Now, he said, see, we have to understand, see, how he developed his world capitalist system analysis. See, before 1415, there was a mini systems. But there was also a world empire system. But it was a centralized system. But most of the area, like either it's America or in the Middle East or even the European area where the civilization was not well established, and after the religious war and the Renaissance, then a proper system being established. So he said, see, we have to understand, see, systems which are governing the structures was the mini system, and it was based on the simple division of the labor. It was based on the single homogeneous culture. It was based on the all members have a specific division of the work, and there was no class and confusion between the society. What kind of cultures you have, what kind of system. Like at the present time, we have a different kind of cultural systems. In the present world economic systems, Emmanuel Wallerstein say, see, we have a single division of the labor, but with a multiple cultural systems. But in the many systems, Emmanuel Wallerstein is telling what kind of system was. They are telling, see, there was a single division of the labor with simple division of labor. At the same time, there was a homogeneous cultural system. So there was no conflict. Then they are telling that there was a simple division of work as well. Means everyone is knowing what their specific role is. So society is completely homogeneous. But over time, a system being developed and swallowed by the some other systems. And there he said, see, because we saw, he talked about in the world history, there are two kind of systems basically developed, world empire system and the world capitalist systems. And here they say the mini system being over time swallowed by the world empire system. And here they say what kind of the world empire systems. And here he defined, see, world empire system is based on consequences of and conquest of and subordinations of peoples across the world. Means, you see, it's based on basically your military might, it's based on capturing the territory of the other and establishing a centralized kind of world system, centralized kind of world economic system. Then they say the economic exploitation and political dominations. And the third, they give the example of such world empires are all the so-called great civilizations pre-modern times, such as China, Egypt, and Rome. In the modern times, they say China, Egypt, and Rome, they are basically, if you have studied the history of this world empire, you can easily understand what kind of their political goals, what kind of their economic system. So, but he hasn't focused more about the world empire systems, but he is telling, see, once if you have to understand according to the world, according to the Immanuel Wallerstein, you have to understand that the world empire system is just like a system which is based on the conquest of and subordinations of the other territory of the world. And then they say, see, their two main goals is the political subordinations and the economic exploitations, like the Great Britain conquered the Indian state, and they dominated almost they politically and economically exploited the country almost 200 years, more than 200 years. And what we witnessed later on, that when British left this country, our economy was shattered and our political system was also de-established. And if you study right now the Shashi Tharoor's book, Ages of Darkness, it's already analyzes that in the 1715th, India was one of the richest country of the world and contributing almost 33% of the world economy, and in 18th century it was contributing almost 23 to 25% of the world economy. But when Britishers conquered of and subjugated us and captures the whole India in 1803, and after established constitutional and legal systems after 1857, and when it left us, what we witnessed from 33 to 0.9% system, 0.9% of our contribution in the world economy. So obviously the system which have been contributing to the world economy more than 1/3, and when they came under the subordinate world empire system, like the British empire systems, and when they left us, when we emerged as independent countries, our contribution was less than 1%. Definitely, how we can provide high wages, how we can provide better services to our peoples, how we can have a proper systems which is based on a basic welfare services. So they are telling, William Wallerstein telling, you see, it's a systems that developed on the basis of their military might, the basis of their technological innovations, on the basis of their enhancement in their industrial revolutions, and that led them to capture other areas which have been struggled, or which have been not themselves equipped with all these developments, and later on they placed themselves as a periphery and core areas. Now they say, see, because I have said, see, the basic, one you have seen the mini systems, then you have seen the world empire systems. Now the basic focus areas which we have already discussed about a lot about the world economic systems. And here they say, what kind of world economic system? See, they say, see how the world economic system have been emerged in the 16th century. Here they say, see, the two factors that played a very important role in development of the world economic systems. One is new transportation technology, and second is the Western military technology. As I have analyzed, I have said it. You see, when he started talking about how the world capitalist systems developed, he said in the 16th century the world capitalist system developed. It first came into Europe. How it came into the Europe, he says the accidental way, like ecological, some agriculture, some textile innovations took place, and then different kind of technology innovated, and it given some kind of military enhancement as well as political enhancement of the European countries, and they raised a standing army, then they bureaucratized themselves, then they equipped with the sophisticated military weapons, and they followed the policy of mercantilism that led to the expansions of the European Empire to the other part of the world. And what we witnessed in the 16th to 17th century, there was a struggle between the Netherlands and the Britain. Then there was a struggle between the Britain and the France. And then what we witnessed, there was a struggle between in the 19th century between the Britain and Germany. Then what we witnessed, the struggle between the so America after 1873, it was already established that the Britain has lost its supremacy vis-a-vis USA, and it has been already confirmed. Then what we witnessed that America emerged as one of the superpower, but till 1945, after the Second World War, Britain being not officially replaced as a hegemonic state, but after 1945, what we witnessed that the America for the short period became a hegemon across the world. Then the Soviet Union started challenging its hegemony in the 70s and after 1945 itself. But after 65, what we have seen, the Soviet Union started giving challenges. But after 1990s, what we saw, the Soviet Union collapsed due to their own contradictions. And then in the 1990, after, we saw again the America established its hegemony. And again in the 21st century, what we saw, there are multipolar world started emerging, and China is the one of the most fastest economic growing countries that started challenging the America. So what we are witnessing that, in the whole analysis of the world economic system or the world capitalist systems, William Stein started trying to tell us, how the Western Europe started dominating across the world and how it reached to the Western Hemisphere, then the Africa, then Australia, then Africa, then Asia, and then the rest of the world, and what the factors that played a very important role in all these things. Here, in this slide, what we focus on, the historical evolution of the world capitalist systems. And here, the William Stein's giving how the world capitalist systems have been historically evaluated. Here, they say the first stage was the emergence of the European world economy in the long 16th century. The first stage, he divided the whole world capitalist systems development in the 4 stages. The first stage is between the 1415 to 1614. He talked about the emergence of European world economy. The second stage, he talked about the system-wise recessions of 1615 to 1730. Means this time what we witnessed, that there was a struggle between the commercial hegemony between the England and the Netherlands, and the consolidations of the European economy. And the third part, what we talk about, industrial capitalism rather than agricultural capitalism. It started from 1760s. 1760s to almost 1970s, this part dominated, where the you can see the blockade of European continental. There was a war between the France and Britain, and the Napoleon hegemony for the short period. And the fourth stage, what we talk about, the stage of consolidations of the industrial capitalist worldwide, means after the turmoil of the revolutions, what we talk about, the Russian Revolution or the emergence of the communist state, first time in the world, and later what we saw after the Second World War, the Soviet Union started playing a very important role, and then the collapse of the Soviet Union. So when we have to analyze in the next lectures, we have to understand about it, how the world capitalist systems being historically analyzed by the Emmanuel Stein in this 4 stages, because his main intention is to understand the world capitalist system rather than to understand the world empire system or the money system. And here, in the last 600 years, what he said, world has been marked by rise and demise of the series of the world systems, and here he said, the number of empire also collapsed, despite they have followed the world capitalist systems like the Habsburg Empire, then the Russian Empire, then the Proto-Asian Empire. Then he said number of world capitalist systems like Netherlands, which dominated in the 16th century, started replaced by the British. Then the British replaced for the short period in the 18th and 19th century by the French. Then again the British established itself. In the 19th century, the America established itself as the dominating role. Then after America, we have witnessed that they got a challenging parity between the Soviet Union and America, and now the scholar like Farid Zakaria is talking about decline of the West and rise of the East. So they are telling you, see, the world system is just, if you have to understand the world system has been marked by rise and demise of the stage of the world system. In the next lectures, we are going to understand how the historically evolution of the world capitalist system has been analyzed by the Immanuel Wallerstein. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us this productive session. Dear friends, we will be meeting again very soon and would be discussing more as said by Dr. Sajid Thakur. So you are requested to write to us at info.cec@nic.in if you have any query, if you have any feedback. We would be meeting again soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.